Thanks for tuning in to Fired Up. I'm Bob Irwin, your host for the show, coming to you from the gun store here in Las Vegas, Nevada. When we talk first about the way cases work their way to the Supreme Court, we all had hopes for this case coming out of New Jersey where an individual was denied a permit. Under New Jersey law, the way they're written, they decided he didn't have a compelling need to have one, so he sued.
Well, the issue is that in New Jersey, basically the handgun permit law works that you have to show a justifiable need in order to even get the permit. So you have to show that you have a reason in order to have to carry the firearm just to even get the conversation going.
All right. The need apparently does not include driving around at night refilling ATM machines, which was this guy's profession. It certainly sounds a little dangerous to me, and if there's a need, I think that this definitely justifies one.
Seems like a slam dunk.
You know, let me read exactly what the law says so that the viewers can understand. The law defines justifiable need as the urgent necessity for self-protection, as evidenced by specific threats or previous attacks which demonstrate a special danger to the applicant's life that cannot be avoided by means other than by issuance of a permit to carry a handgun. So apparently, Mr. Drake has to be victimized prior to...
In order to justify the need.
In order to justify the need. But, you know, having been a cop in New Jersey for 10 years, what this really does is just, it adds political fuel, because the giving out of these permits is all based on who you are in a lot of situations. So if you're buddies with the chief of police, he can issue it to you based on what he wants to do. And instead of being reasonable about it, they make it so difficult and so impossible that it causes these issues.
The Drake case, which is the way we refer to this, is the plaintiff's last name was Drake. This is a case that was fought all the way through the appellate courts, and probably was one of 5 or 6 cases that are making their way through the system in various jurisdictions. We had hopes, because New Jersey's law permits the issuance of a permit. It just doesn't make it mandatory. It's not a shall issue, it's a may issue dependent state. Of course, we've recently, in the last 5-6 years, we've had several decisions from the Supreme Court that were good. The Heller v. DC decision, which is basically the one that said the right to keep a firearm for self-defense is an inalienable right, and the Second Amendment says so. The Chicago case, McDonald v. Chicago, turned that into you can have the firearm in states, thereby taking the Heller decision and making it applicable to all 50 states. Thereafter, in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, Moore v. Madigan said Illinois cannot deny permits. They have to come up with some scheme to allow people to have firearms. Now, Chicago fought that. The rest of the state went for it. The legislature passed it, and they're now issuing permits. And amazingly enough, they didn't go with a may issue scheme. They went with a shall issue scheme in Illinois. California recently had a case where a 3-judge panel of the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals said the counties that were not issuing permits were doing so impermissibly because they were denying absolute right to carry. And so those counties, some of them are currently issuing permits. The problem with the Drake case, we don't know what the problem was, because the Supreme Court simply said without comment, we're not going to take it on cert. And of course, the Supreme Court doesn't have to take it. They couldn't take every case. There has to be some kind of a circuit split or a very, very core constitutional question come up.
Don't we have a circuit split already on this issue?
We do, but here's what happens. You've got, on every gun case, there's probably going to be a 4-5 split. Right now, the pro-gun side is 5, the anti-gun side is 4. The last thing the pro-gun justices want to do is bring on a case that's not clean and pure. They want a case that they can rule on, that they don't lose one of their iffy members to the other side and get a bad ruling. There are going to be other chances. I personally kind of liked this one because it was pretty clear this is an ATM guy, there's no real questions. Yeah. But we don't know why they didn't take this one. There are other cases that are going to wind their way up there, and I suspect the justices who are pro-Second Amendment, who were on the Heller majority and the McDonald majority, are waiting for the right case where they can make another good pro-gun ruling that is not going to be assailable, as opposed to making one that's questionable or actually losing a decision.
But don't you wonder if someone's going to die in the meantime? This guy is a perfect example. He's carrying large sums of money in the middle of the night, filling up ATM machines.
I'll go out on a limb and tell you that somebody before this issue gets to the Supreme Court will die who has applied for a permit and been denied. That's just the nature of the case. We fought gun cases for 50 years before we got one that said you have a right to have a firearm. Longer than that. So it's going to happen.
In this case, the details of it are not only was the NRA and National Shooting Sports and whatever throwing money into this, but 19 states' attorney generals wrote Friends of the Court briefs saying they should solve this in the favor of Drake. That's a lot of pressure, and
They still didn't take it.
we'll have to wait for another plaintiff to come along, and hopefully it's a stronger case they like. We're out of time for this segment. We'll be back in a little bit. Don't go away.
Our panel discussion will continue right after this. Hi, it's Emily, and I'm coming to you from the Shotgun Wedding Chapel here at the Gun Store in Las Vegas, where you can book your shotgun wedding ceremony, vow renewal, or commitment ceremony. You're watching Fired Up with Bob Irwin.
And we are back here on Fired Up. This case incident is something out of California that is a terrible thing, and we're going to have some serious issues with it, and you'll see why in just a moment. There's an elderly widow living outside of Sacramento. She asked her brother to move in with her, her elderly brother, because the neighborhood is terrible. She's had her house broken into twice, and she's afraid to be in there by herself. She's already suffered break-ins,
Yeah.
so her brother comes to live there.
She'd actually tried to sell her home already to get away from this neighborhood. She'd had several break-ins before, and then again, she finds herself, it's on an early Sunday morning, that there's another break-in into her home. Now, I think this is at least the third one that she's had in this exact property.
Well, the brother that moved in, he got his handgun, opened fire, killing both of the intruders. However, one intruder was 14 and the other one was 16 years old. Now, the 16-year-old had previously broken into that house, so he was a repeat offender on that particular one. But they were both 14 and 16, so that's the rub right there. I mean, it's...
You know, we've seen a jump in the number of cases like this, and this is really a serious issue for our society, because are these people supposed to stay home and be terrorized without any means to defend themselves, and then suffer as being victimized by the neighbors for making the decision to save themselves? You know, they're 14 and 16. Are they capable of killing or crippling these people? You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, and that's realistically, that is the real issue here, because of the age makes them sympathetic, but they're not so young that they're incapable of doing real harm. You know, some 16-year-olds are full grown, some 14-year-olds are full grown. You can't tell them apart until you start running dates of birth. Now, the homeowner and her brother are now receiving angry threats and calls. The family member of these two kids are just, you know, up in arms is a bad way to say it, but they're up in arms about it. They're very upset. Really, the tragedy here is that these kids were emulating somebody else. They didn't wake up one day at 14 and 16 and decide we're going to go into the thug life. They're you know, members of a gang or affiliated with somebody who this is something they do, and they've been taught this behavior, and they're continuing it on, and they are violent criminals even at that age.
Well, when they say the statistics, the crime statistics that they use as far as handguns, that so many children were killed with guns. A lot of these children are 14 and 16-year-old gang members who are shooting it out in the streets. You know, and that's right, where it distorts those numbers also. So, you know, I agree with you 100%. You know, they're 14 and 16, but that doesn't mean that they're, you know, children like we.
They're shooting each other has been a problem for a long time. Where I want to go with this, though, is to the elderly couple who now is taking, you know, the family is threatening to sue. Well, they're not going to win a lawsuit, but that they shouldn't have done. They've done something wrong, and the couple obviously feels already they've done something wrong. I recall when, in my distant past, when I was teaching in police academies, one of the scenarios we would give to the cadets was you're chasing an armed robber, you run around the corner of a building, and there he is standing with a gun pointed at you. You have no cover. What do you do? And the cadets would say, well, I would duck. I would ask him to, he's pointing a gun at you. You have to save your own life. That is a really tough decision. And most of the cadets couldn't verbalize that in the beginning of their training, that what I'm supposed to do is shoot a 14-year-old child, but it's to prevent him from killing you.
You know, I had a 16-year-old committing an armed robbery, and I rolled up on it, and he had a machine gun in one hand, he had a bag of money in the other. He had just beaten the store clerks, and as he's running towards the store, I had to make the decision whether to shoot him or not. And as he came out, he saw me. I told him to drop it. He did. Turned out he was 16, and when I took the mask off him, he looked at me with the coldest eyes and said, "I should have killed you when I had the chance." He served less than a year in juvie and then came out and murdered a man in a wheelchair. 16 years old.
And if we're talking about like sensitive, you know, humans, we're talking about young children. We want to protect our young children, and the elderly are just as vulnerable. So when you just give the ages, if you look at a full-grown 16-year-old, they're going to look the same as a full-grown 26-year-old when you walk into a room. You don't know.
Sure. One of the problems with these kids in this age, and I know you know this, Randy, because you ran into it, is the older guys will get these kids at 9, 10, 11, and because they know they're not going to do any real time. Right. They'll have them dealing the drugs, holding the guns, holding the cash. Right. They'll send him in to do a shoot, because even if the kid gets caught, he's going to do a couple of years in juvenile, then his record will be sealed and he'll be back out. He learns all this stuff, and it just becomes the way you do stuff. And it's really hard for me as a criminal defense attorney when I get a 17-year-old who's now being charged as an adult, and he looks at me and goes, "But I'm 17. I said, "Well, you can be charged as an adult. Now you have to deal with this." "Well, I thought I'd only get a year." "Well, you're looking at 10 to life." So, and the same experience. I talk to them, and they don't seem to really get it because they have been trained to do it.
Right. The victims here are the elderly couple.
Absolutely.
And that's where the focus should be, on them being the victims, not these two
children.
Yeah, I don't even like to use the term children, because it
minors.
It's being thrown all over the papers in Sacramento. Right, you can imagine the legislator and so forth berating this old couple who did nothing but probably save their own lives. And I wish, you know, on these panels, usually we have some kind of a brilliant solution to say, try this. Yeah. You know, if you've got time to give warnings, you're going to do that anyway. But this is a society problem, not a problem we can correct in concealed weapon class. We can't say this is what we can, this is what you should do, but people can't do that. It just, right now, I have no solution.
Hi, I'm Mason, coming to you from one of the VIP ranges here at the gun store in Las Vegas. And you're watching Fired Up with Bob Irwin.
We're going to take some time now and answer some of our viewer questions that you've submitted for Bob. Bob, our first question, somebody asked, every time I turn around, I hear someone using the term assault rifle. What exactly is an assault rifle?
An assault rifle technically is a selective fire, meaning it's full automatic or semi-automatic. They fire a cartridge that is stronger than a pistol cartridge and weaker than what we used to consider only rifle cartridges. When they first were invented in World War II by the Germans, actually, they fired an intermediate sized cartridge that was just halfway between a rifle and a pistol and had a magazine that held a whole bunch of rounds and were selective fire. The Kalashnikovs that are out today from the communist bloc and the M16s we use and so forth are basically refinements of that original theory of a medium-sized cartridge and lots of bullets.
Now, being here at the gun store, obviously we have machine guns for rent.
We have them for rent, and we have licenses to have them.
Exactly. And a lot of people that come in here say, are those legal to own? Would you please explain to people, this person's asking if machine guns are legal or illegal, but explain now that
They
works
are
in Nevada.
legal in most states. Some states they're not legal for civilians to possess. In 33 states they are legal for civilians to own and possess. The trick is they have to be registered with the federal government, and there's a $200 tax the government puts on that. So if you go to buy one, whatever the cost of it is, you add $200, which you send off to the government with a form and your fingerprints and so on. It's quite an involved procedure. You're looking at 6-8 months. And then when you get the paperwork back that says, okay, Fred can own the gun, then you can go back to the dealer and pick up the gun and go on your merry way. Just can't take it into states where they are actually unlawful. Got to be careful there.
Another viewer wants to know, what are the limitations regarding knives? I believe that, like, carrying certain knives, are they illegal?
They are regulated by the counties and cities, wherever you may be. In general, in Nevada, you're safe with a folding knife that the blade is no longer than 3 inches. If it's a automatic opening knife, the law says the blade has to be less than 1.5 inches. So you can have them little pretend switchblades. Beyond that, there are various other knives that are illegal if they have the brass knuckles built in, if they are made as part of a belt buckle, so they become in effect a concealed weapon because they don't look like a knife. A conventional pocket knife with a blade less than 3 inches is no problem at all. The other thing that's illegal is anything you can carry on your person that's a dirk or a dagger. A dirk is a ice pick type weapon. A dagger is a double-edged knife. If that blade is longer than 1.5 inches or so, you're going to get in trouble with that one too. But that'll vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction in cities and counties around Nevada. So you really got to call the jurisdiction you live in and ask them that particular question.
Well, that's going to end our question segment. If you have anything that you'd like to ask Bob or any of our other panelists, please write us at questions@firedupwithbob.com. Did you miss the show this week? Don't worry. Check us out on our YouTube channel, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. The Gun Store of Las Vegas is your place for the ultimate machine gun experience. With 25 years in the business, 30 individual lanes, and a deep arsenal, we offer you a truly unique thrill that can only come from shooting a high-powered firearm. We offer VIP and corporate packages, bachelor and bachelorette group rates, and the best selection of firearms in town. The Gun Store offers free Nevada CCW classes and gun safety programs certified by the NRA. When you're in town, tell them you want to go to the world-famous indoor range, the Gun Store in Las Vegas. On 2900 East Tropicana Avenue. Log on to thegunstorelasvegas.com.
Hi, I'm Greg, and welcome to the Gun Store in Las Vegas. Here at the Gun Store, we're here to help you where we have a huge selection of firearms. When you're in Las Vegas, stop by and see us. Guns, politics, and self-defense. That's Fired Up with Bob Irwin.
Thanks for watching Fired Up with Bob. We're going to do another historical firearm tonight. Tonight we're going to do the MP40. This was the German World War II submachine gun that was widely issued by many of their troops. This was commonly misnamed as the Schmeisser. And what happened is that during the war, beginning of the war, when our troops apprehended or captured one for evaluation, they looked at the magazine, and on the magazine it said Patent Schmeisser, right? Nowhere on the gun does it say that. In fact, there was a code, a 3-letter code that Germany used during the war to denote the different manufacturers, and this one is AYF, which means it was made by Irma, and this gun was actually designed by a guy named Heinrich Vollmer. So it had nothing to do with the Schmeisser, with Hugo Schmeisser, but he held the patent on the magazine. So when they captured the magazine, they saw Patent Schmeisser on it, they assumed that the gun was a Schmeisser. So it's on all the war movies you see, you know, Schmeisser, it's not. All right, MP40 was a very reliable gun. It was a very innovative gun. It was one of the first guns to use plastic and sheet metal. It was a 9mm caliber, and it fired about 450, 550 rounds a minute. It had a folding stock that could be used for paratroopers or tankers, and you've seen them in all the war movies. A very, very pleasant shooting gun. It's one of my favorites. It doesn't have a selector on it, so it fires in full auto mode only. It is very controllable, however, and you can get short bursts off or even single shots. And we're going to shoot it. Like most submachine gun, this gun fires from what they call an open bolt. In other words, I'll pull the bolt back, it'll stay back, and we'll insert the magazine and fire. When the gun fires, bolt will go home, strip a round off the magazine, fire it, and then when I let off the trigger, it stays in the rear position. All right. Magazine in, and here we go. Bolt is forward, we'll pull the bolt back, take the magazine out, and we're done.
Thanks for watching Fired Up with Bob Irwin, coming to you from the gun store in Las Vegas. We'll see you next week. Check us out online at our webpage, firedupwithbobirwin.com.